Mute everybody. Um, so uh, anyway, welcome everyone to Strength is in our co-op members, growing co-ops together. I want to tell a little story about why we decided to do this. I work at the Kohala Center. I'm Teresa Young. I'm a co-op development specialist. And the Call Center is an interesting organization. And most other co-op development centers just focus on co-ops. And really the Call Center focuses on like our food system, people, place. It's an interesting organization to work for. And we're very guided by values of, I think, of this place. And so a couple of weeks ago, my boss posed this question to me that said, what is the Aina teaching you about, what is the Aina teaching you, and how can you take what you learn and apply that to co-ops and make co-ops in Hawaii better and make the work that you do better? So that's a very interesting question and not one I would have ever pondered. But thinking about it, it really brought me to, I work with a lot of farmers. And so I work with, I don't actually work in the Aina, in the land, but I work with farmers that do. And what I learned from them and this about farming and growing things here in Hawaii, in this place, is that you really have to cultivate the land first, the soil first, before you plant something. And then it starts to grow and it uses all that nutrition in the soil, and you make sure that you've cultivated that soil. And then as it starts to grow, you also have to care for the land, right? You have to, there's little weeds that come up and you have to pull them. And if you let them grow, they then sprout seeds and they take over the garden. So in growing food here, there's a lot in the relationships that we need to cultivate and grow. And so that to me is the idea of these workshops that we are trying to cultivate. We're trying to look at our co-ops and think about how do we nourish the soil? How do we build an environment that is strong against the invasive species that might come our way? So this is why we're doing this 4-part series in basic co-op understanding. And we'll go through what the other 3 workshops are going to be at the end. This one is all about co-ops and introducing you guys to co-ops. And so as you can see, the speakers here are going to be talking as we go through this thing, and you get to be introduced to Hawaii co-ops by some of the co-ops that we have. So go ahead and change the slide, Donna. So what is a co-op? So a co-op is it's a business, it's a corporation, it's any business that is really, it's sort of characterized by an organization that is owned, benefited, and controlled by the members. So basically the difference between a typical business and a co-op is that a typical business is in business to make a profit. And a co-op is in business to provide goods or services to its members at cost. And so that's kind of the basic difference. And so co-ops are businesses that people form to be able to meet common needs, whether it's social needs, cultural needs, economic needs. We care for each other this way. Go ahead, Donna. So co-ops are really guided by principles. And without principles and values, it's like co-ops won't work. So, and it's just the way it is. And so these 7 co-op principles are international principles that have been agreed upon around the world. They sort of have their roots in the first co-op that was started in England back in the 1800s, during a time where everyone was moved out of the rural areas into the cities to have to go into work into factories, into textile mills. And the companies owned everything. They owned the work, the housing, the stores. And so these group of people got together to start a co-op and to start their own store. So they started their own store and they actually were successful. And from there, they moved into housing, where from there they had the right to vote and they started participating. So it really changed a lot of people's lives. And we're focusing today, I'm not going to go over all these, but we're really bringing the idea of training and education and information about co-ops to people so that we can build a stronger co-op community. And we're doing it in a way that brings the co-ops together. So us co-ops are connecting, and we all have a super amount of concern for community and what's going on, which is why we do this. So go ahead, Donna. So I got requested to give people kind of an overview of Hawaii co-ops. And so this is a map, and this is where the co-ops are. And I'm just gonna kind of go over some of what the co-ops are. And I got most of this information off of the DCCA site. So there may be some more co-ops that I don't know about, because if they don't have the co-op in their name or I don't know them, then I'm gonna miss them. But I think I got most of them. So anyway, we have 9 co-ops that are organized, and the reasons that they say they're organized is to do research, teaching, and consulting of some type. So right now, there's currently 9 of those. We have 2 farm supply stores, one in Hilo and one on Molokai. And we're gonna have Jack from Molokai talk about Hikiola a little bit later. We have one food co-op that's been serving its members on Oahu for over 50 years. And we've got them with us today too. And Clifford's gonna tell us about them. So there's 2 power co-ops, energy co-ops. One is a Kauai Island utility co-op, and the other one is Oahu Energy Co-op on Molokai. One is a utility, the other one is a renewable energy. And I can already see we got some of those members here today, so that's really great. We've got 6 groups that do ag processing and marketing, and that would include the Ulu Co-op in one of those. So we've got an example to share of those. We've got 4 groups that have come together to form co-ops, and they do some sort of leasing agreement. So there's 2 of them that are land leases. They have big leases that then they sublease to farmers, and then they tie that into a market. And then in Puna, they have what they call a co-op called the Puna Flower Power. And you would think those guys might be hippies, but they're really not. They were orchid growers that all their farms got taken out in the volcano. So what they've done is come together as a co-op. They took out a master lease on some land, and they've been putting up greenhouses, and they are sharing all the utility costs, all the inputs. They're really working together to rebuild the horticulture. We have a couple of producer co-ops that really, they just share means of production like feed, inputs for farming, and they're really small, but they do it, they form that way. We have a couple big transportation co-ops. One is sugar. They're not very busy these days. The other one is the cattle. The Cattle Association has a co-op, and they've been moving cattle around as a co-op for a very long time. We have a couple meat slaughter co-ops. One's a brick and mortar on Molokai. The other one is a mobile. We have 2 coffee co-ops that are down in Ka'u that represent the coffee industry and do a lot of work there. We've got 4 water co-ops on various islands. Most of them are on the Big Island. And then we have one on Kauai. And basically they're ag areas that have put in a water system and share the costs so that they can get ag water at cost. And then we have actually 2 worker co-ops. So one is Malaka'ulu, and that's a co-op that Donna also started. So we're going to hear about them today, along with when she talks about the Ulu co-op. So that's kind of it in a nutshell of a kind of an overview of the existing co-ops. We've lost several in the past couple of years. COVID took out some of them. There was another little consumer co-op in Waimanalo that got taken out. The state closed them down like 3 times, and they couldn't figure out how to come back. So it's been tough. So that's why we're kind of trying to do this, is to rally the troops and really start to learn together and move forward together. So Donna, could you go to the next slide? So this is my last slide that I'm going to talk about, because basically I am a resource for co-ops in Hawaii. And like I said before, that I work for the Kohala Center, but I work in the Rural Cooperative and Business Development Services for the, and the work I do is supported by a USDA and a grant that helps us do co-op development. So I'm the co-op developer. We also have a farmer training program. And then we have a business developer who helps with microloans and loan strategies. And he works with both sometimes co-ops and individual farmers that are members of co-ops to help them increase whatever their business is, their farm business. Do they need a tractor? Do they need something? And then we have a grant writer on our team that the idea is we want people to have successful grants. So we support groups that are submitting grants, in that we help them think about their grant and go through it. So that's it in a nutshell, and we're gonna keep rolling here. So I think, do we have our next speaker? Is he on? Did he get on? Did David get on?
I'm on.
Oh, awesome. Welcome. So this is David Bissell. Bissell? Is that how you said it? Bissell?
Bissell.
Okay, Bissell. So from Kauai, take it away. I can't wait.
All right, thank you. It's great to be here on this presentation, and that was very informative on the co-ops in the state. I didn't know all those co-ops were out there myself, so pretty interesting. Next slide, please. So KIUC, we're the electric utility that serves the island of Kauai. We're the only island that's not served by the Hikio companies. We were formed in 2002. Originally, the utility was provided by an investor-owned utility out of Connecticut, Citizens Utility, and they decided to sell off their utility businesses. So they put our island up for sale. Group of local business people and community leaders got together and made a bid on the co-op to form it. Bid was accepted, but then the transaction got turned down by the Public Utilities Commission. We're a fully regulated public utility ultimately, to jump ahead a little bit, but they turned down the original deal. And almost more miraculous than the first deal getting put together and accepted by the seller, second deal got reformulated, a new group. They expanded the group of people working on the co-op, trying to get a broader reach throughout the community. Actually hired a professional investment banker to help with the bidding process at that point, put a new bid together at a lower price. Ultimately, it got accepted by Citizens, and that one did get approved by the PUC. So we were formed in 2002. We've got about 70,000 residents and 30,000 visitors at any time that we serve. And we're one of a large network of cooperative electric providers throughout the United States, with about 900 co-ops, and I think 48 of the states now have cooperatives. And there's also hundreds of cooperative electric providers internationally as well. One area that's kind of close to all of us is the Philippines has many electric cooperatives serving their islands as well. So it's been kind of crazy. We're over, this year we hit our 20-year mark. It seems like yesterday. I've been here for about 16 of the years since we were formed, and started with nothing, 100% debt financed, not a dollar of equity when we were formed. The federal government was our big lender. The Rural Utilities Service lent us most of the money. Roll forward almost 20 years later, and we've got over $100 million of equity, 30-some% equity level, real well established financially. It's been you can go to the next slide. It's been really a pretty significant success financially, operationally, and in many areas that I'll talk about. But we're a traditional cooperative. We follow the cooperative principles as we discussed earlier. We've got 9 elected directors. They serve 3-year terms, so we have 3 elected directors each year. One of the things we do is we have a very active National Trade Association, National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, They provide a lot of services to us. They provide director education, and all our directors must achieve director accreditation. They have various levels, but must get the first level within, I think it's a year of being elected. They have to do that. So they go through training. They continue to go through training throughout their time they serve, and it helps to have a good, well-established group. Next slide. One of the main things that directors do in our organization is they set the strategic plan. We've gone through several gyrations of strategic planning. We're working on our latest one now, but probably the key one in our formation was the one done in 2008, where we set a 50% renewable standard. At that time, we were only about 8% renewable. And the board, again, the elected board, really reflecting the desires of the community, pushed us to come up with a very aggressive target at that time. The state targets weren't out yet, and really got in front of it with an early aggressive target for renewables. We met again in 2017, and they upped the target to 70%, right about the time we were reaching 50%. And last year we hit about 67% renewable. This year will be very close to 70%. I think we're going to be just a little bit below as sales growth has came as we come out of the COVID financial problems. Next slide. Look at what it's meant for our utility rates. Kind of an interesting correlation. You can see on the far left side in 2010, we were 7.9% renewable. 2020, we're at 67% renewable. And the line up above is our electric rates. Back in 2010, oil was cheap. It was about 35 cents, but you can just see how volatile the rates of energy were here when we had low renewables, hitting 46 cents the next year and kind of bouncing around in the mid 40 cents per kilowatts during that period. But now you can see a lot of this was oil, combination of oil pricing dropping along with more renewables coming, cost-effective renewables. But our rates went down to the 35 cent-ish level, and they've really held stable going forward, even to today when oil's gone way up. With our 70% renewable, we're significantly hedged against oil pricing. Next slide. Talked about the equity. One of the other key parts is was mentioned in the first presentation. We are a nonprofit, just like all the other cooperatives, and we've returned over $41 million of equity to our members since we've been formed. Started off through checks right back to them, but now for the most part, we do it as a bill adjustment. So we anything we make over what we need to support our operations and our financial structure essentially gets returned. And the third one is really the key, going back to what I talked about on the previous slide. We're now nearing rate parity with Oahu. We're lowest. We're lower than the Big Island right now. We're only 5% higher rates than Oahu. And why I say only, Oahu has tremendous scale advantages. As we all know, they have a coal plant, at least for the next several months, that's producing very low cost energy for them. And give you a feeling for how much of an accomplishment this has been. When we were formed in 2002, we were about 75% higher rates than Oahu. So to reach almost parity, and we're pretty optimistic that if oil pricing stays high like it is, probably by the end of the year, we'll be lower than Oahu, which really was kind of my personal huge stretch goal in my time. And I think we're going to see it this year. So we're really proud of that. That's a combination of doing good projects, having the ability to make projects happen, to get renewables in the ground, get the development done. And it's really cost control. We focused on controlling costs really ever since we've been formed. When I first started here in 2006, I think we had 170 positions budgeted. Last year, we were down into the low 130 areas. So we're doing more. We're doing it more efficiently, controlling costs and bringing on good projects to keep our rates stable. We'd love for them to be below the 30-cent level, but I don't think that's going to happen with our scale disadvantages and inability to bring in, we can't, as you all know, and we can't bring in natural gas, can't do coal. On Kauai, you may not know, we really can't do wind because of our endangered species situation. We don't have any geothermal potential here. So it's really solar-based is our renewable of choice, solar and hydro. We do have a good hydro infrastructure that I'll talk about. Next slide. Talked about rates, talked about our renewables, but the other piece of the pie is reliability. And we've had very good reliability. Last year, we had our best reliability ever as a co-op. And that's really a remarkable achievement of my operating people, given that we've also been bringing on an extreme amount of renewables, including hitting 100% renewable for thousands of hours during the daytime periods when the sun was out over the last couple of years. So pretty huge accomplishment. We also were named Electric Cooperative of the Year by the Smart Electric Power Alliance last year. So get some national, and really we've gotten some international recognition about our developments here on our little island. Next slide. With that, that's kind of my quick and dirty introduction to KIUC, and look forward to questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Okay, Clifford, you're up.
Thank you. My name is Clifford Chang, and I'm honored to be here representing Kokua Market. I'm in the capacity serving as the current president of the board. So in that capacity, I'm very happy to be able to do this presentation. It's great to see, 38 participants on this call. Really very exciting. A lot of new information. We're very, very different from David and the Hawaiʻi Cooperative. David, if we had $1 million in equity, we'd be like just ecstatic. But we're a very, very different model, and I didn't realize we're the only food cooperative here in the state. So I'm going to spend just a few minutes, a little timer going here, walking through Kokua, and we're very, very pleased, as I'll say, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary. Well, we celebrated it last year. So we were established in 1971. Next slide. And our official name is Kokua Country Foods Cooperative. We do business as Kokua Market, and that's what our food store is called. We have a storefront location very close to the University of Hawaii. It's on South King Street, sort of the intersection of University Avenue and South King Street. And again, we were established in 1971, so our 50th anniversary was last year, 2021. And I'd love to say that we've had just rip-roaring success over our 50 years, but to be perfectly honest, it has been a struggle at times, very, very successful at others, and struggle at times, and including very, 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 very different markets since when we started. So next slide, please. So we were organized, and this is kind of a belabored mission statement, but it's when we were established back in 1971. So it was really to promote the economic welfare and nutritional well-being of our patrons. Basically, so patrons means basically both our owners, our members, and anybody who shops in our store. Group activities, auxiliary services for mutual benefit, advantage, and then as you're listening here, as Teresa went through earlier on, we are we're guided by the 7 cooperative principles, which are listed here in our mission statement. I won't go through these again. Next slide. So when we were established, there actually wasn't a consumer cooperative. There was a cooperative law in Hawaii that allowed for, I think, electrical co-ops. I think it allowed for agricultural co-ops. I think there were some housing co-ops, but there wasn't such a thing as really a consumer co-op, and I'll explain that a little bit more. So we actually were established as a nonprofit organization. I wasn't one of the original founders, so I don't know all of this history. My understanding is it was a group of Punahou graduates, and remember, this was back in 1971, and at that point in time, it was very, very difficult to get things, at least on a consumer basis, what I would just call healthy, natural, quote, whole foods. Whole grains, whole wheat flour, brown rice, tofu, raw milk, cheese, sprouts, Japanese miso, other products, celestial seasonings, teas, was a big one back then, and then locally caught fish. So a group of people got together and they established it as a nonprofit at that time. It was all volunteer labor. In order to be a member of the co-op, you had to work 3 hours a month, and if you wanted to work 3 hours a week, you were designated as a co-manager, and you got a little bit bigger discount on the product. And we stayed that way, and we also served at that point in time as a wholesale supplier to a number of buying clubs around the state. So I think not only were we serving our customers and owners on Oahu, but Kokua was really instrumental in providing these sort of products throughout the state via buying clubs. I think one thing that we're very, very proud of, Lori Carlson, who was our first general manager, longtime member, we were instrumental, very much because of Kokua, the passage of the Hawaii Consumer Cooperatives Act, which basically enabled Kokua to legally become a consumer cooperative in Hawaii. Next slide. And so I won't go through this basically in detail, but basically a consumer cooperative, as Teresa's already indicated, it's a member. Every member basically has only one vote, has one vote and only one vote, there's a maximum rate of return on that investment. So these are not shares per se. These are not stocks. You buy a membership share, and if you want to leave the co-op, you get that same level of capital back. And the last thing that defines co-op, we make a profit. We have to make a profit. We can't keep our storefront open unless we make a profit. One of the difficulties we've had over the years is we're a really meaning, very committed group of people. We don't necessarily have the best cooperative business experience. How do you run a grocery store? And so we really, one of our biggest needs all the time is hiring somebody as a general manager who really has that experience. But for order us to stay open and stay alive, we do have to make a profit. The difference is that any profit we make over and above what we need to keep the store open, if you probably know, if you belong to other co-ops, REI co-op, otherwise, you get a patronage rebate. So proportionate to what you spend at the cooperative, that money is returned to you. We have never done well enough to actually provide patronage rebates, but we do return, if you're an owner of our store, it is returned to you in a way. We have owner discount days that provide you with a discount on those particular days to return some of that back to you. Next slide. So I wanted to just we were asked to just sort of what do we do that for our services, and so we really are a grocery store, basically a natural foods grocery store. But I think, and clearly the market has really changed. So when we started in 1971, it was very, very hard to get these products. You can get these products now pretty much everywhere. KTA, Foodland, Whole Foods. Everybody serves it. Everybody has bulk. Everybody has things. So I don't know that we could say the cooperative was part of that movement in terms of making that change. But clearly, people's eating habits have changed over time, and we were a leader in that. I don't think we were necessarily the trend. I don't know if we're the trendsetter we are, but very much we were a trendsetter, maybe not the leader in that. But we really, really try very much to support both organic and conventional produce, and really, really emphasizing the best we can product produced in Hawaii, whether it's grown by small farmers, backyard growers, whether they're free-range chicken, free-range eggs, grass-fed beef. We now have a deli in a butcher shop in our store that allows us to bring venison over from Molokai. I'm actually currently here on Molokai, and love the deer, but they have become really, really, really an invasive nuisance. And so one of the things we're able to do is just actually bring venison over to Hawaii. We are very, very strong in bulk purchasing and try to really, whatever we can do to reduce the impact of our, so reduced rate shopping. We encourage people to bring their own bags, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We have an organic and conventional deli food shopping, both catering to both vegan and non-vegan people. And again, we are not at the moment providing patronage rebates, but we do have regularly scheduled owner discount and shopping days. So that's what I was saying. But I did want to close with just basically a thanks to Teresa and the Kohala Center. If you don't know, if you haven't worked with Teresa, I've worked with Teresa quite a bit. And they're really, I call them sort of the help desk. Whenever I need anything, I can call Teresa, and she can sort of help us with that. We've also used them quite a bit on strategic planning and strategic. They are really, really, really very much of a resource, and I encourage you to stay in touch with Teresa. Thank you all very much. Last slide, I think, is just a thank you. Oh, that maybe is my last slide. Thanks so much, guys.
Unmute.
Thank you, Clifford.
You're up, Donna.
All right. Aloha, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, great to learn more about Kokua and about KIUC. One of the cooperative principles is cooperation among cooperatives. And I'm happy to say that we supply Kokua, the Hawaiʻi Ulu Co-op supplies Kokua. So that's one of the principles in action. So I'm actually going to start by telling you about our farm, our personal farm, which is structured as a worker co-op. Malakalu Ulu was one of the 9 founders of HUC. It was established in 2015 as a restoration site in South Kona on 4 acres, right in the heart of what used to be the Kalu Ulu, which was the breadfruit agroforestry belt that stretched about 20 miles long from South Kona about up until the airport. So we are actively restoring that site. And as a worker co-op model, basically the way it works is that the workers on the farm are the owners. And at the end of the year, any profit made is redistributed back to the workers according to their patronage. So in KIUC's model, patronage would be the amount of energy that you consume. And in Kokua's market, it would be the amount of money that you spend in the store. At MKC, that's our abbreviation for Malakalulu, it's the number of hours that you work. And just this last year, we had our first small profit that got redistributed to members, and we actually decided to keep most of it in the farm as to continue improving the land. We formed as a worker co-op primarily because I really like the co-op model, to be totally honest with you. We could have been a nonprofit. There's definitely that element of this project. We wanted to not be a nonprofit because we wanted to demonstrate the economic viability of traditional Hawaiian farming practices. That was one of the goals we had with setting this up. And the worker co-op really rewards those who do the work. So that's why we decided to go with that. What we do, in addition to restoration, we do some research on the farm. My husband's a professor at UH, so we integrate some of his research on the traditional systems. We supply HUC. We also propagate trees and supply primarily ulu, but other indigenous crops to the community. We benefit the workers in that we provide really access to farming. I think none of us are full-time farmers, and the worker co-op model on a piece of farmland enables us to express our passion for farming while also pursuing other careers. And realistically, the unfortunate reality is that it's really hard to make a living farming. And it's really hard to access land. And our land is a KS lease. We're not allowed to live there. And none of us can afford to live in the area. It's a reality. When my husband and I were ready to buy land, we tried to get land around the farm and we couldn't afford it. So by having a worker co-op, it literally is an enabler for people to get into farming and to still be able to support our families. So that's a reality. And now I'll tell you a bit about HUC. So Hawaiʻi Ulu Co-op, as I mentioned, was formed by 9 growers in 2016. And this is basically how we work. So now this is an agricultural producer cooperative. So in this model, it's the farmers who are the owners. And patronage, your share of profit is based on the pounds of produce that you deliver to the co-op each year. And so this is the mechanics. It starts here in number 1. Farmer members own the business and they patronize the co-op by supplying the co-op with ulu in this case. The co-op aggregates the ulu, we process and add value to extend the shelf life, market the product to businesses and consumers, do the education that's needed to grow the demand for the supply. Hopefully businesses and consumers buy the product, and then again at the end of the year, profits are distributed back to the farmers so that they can reinvest in their farm and keep going. HUC has not yet had a profit, so we have not yet redistributed profits back to the farmers, but we're working on it. So this is basically, what we provide to our growers and why we were formed is to enable farmers to focus on what they love, farming, and providing the rest of the work, because farming is not all of the work, right? And you have to sell your crop. And for some of the wonderful crops that we can grow in Hawaii, there's not yet, the market is not really developed yet. So the main things that HUC offers is a guaranteed market and a stable price, so that farmers have the confidence to plant and care for their crops. The rest of the bullets really, to me, are the add-ons. Those top ones are the reason that HUC was formed. Today, there's kind of, strong demand for Ulu, I would say, but even back in 2016, it was a different story, and we had to go out there and educate the public to build demand. Ownership in a business owned by other like-minded farmers, and that sort of camaraderie and sharing of values and empowerment, I think, is a big part of it as well. Yeah, and ultimately, by working together, we are much more than the sum of our parts. So that's what the co-op provides, that structure. This is our growth over the years. So we now have 111 members across 3 islands. This is just a snapshot of our production volumes over the last few years. You can see that we've added on co-crops, which we've had to do because Ulu supply has had a lot of challenges. But diversification offers a lot of benefits, including increased revenues for some of our growers. And this is kind of, this is what we provide the community. As Teresa said, the co-op model is all about community. So we are increasing access to nutritious, wholesome, indigenous staple crops. We make access convenient and easy for, the modern day busy families in all these different forms. And you can now find our crops in a bunch of grocery stores, including Kokua, all around the state. Thank you. Okay, Jack, you're up.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for asking me to participate in this. I commend everybody for their professional presentations. Unfortunately, I'm not that way. And I'm not sure why, but anyway, I've been involved in Hikiola Co-op for 21 years, I think, as a board member, and also as a purchaser of their farm supplies. So originally, I think the Hikiola is just about at 50 years. It's coming up on the 50-year anniversary. Like many other co-ops, it's gone through struggles. At the beginning, it was originally formed by a number of farmers that needed agricultural products for the crops that they were trying to grow on Molokai. So I think the original premise was to be able to buy in bulk, to be able to get the product to Molokai at a lower rate so that they could then afford to buy those supplies. So they offer a full range, and it's changed over time, as have their clientele, because once the corn companies came onto Molokai, then they had bigger accounts. And unfortunately on Molokai, the smaller accounts have dwindled over time. And this is part of where co-ops, at least the co-ops I'm involved in, is how do you adjust to the changing market conditions that allow you to be a functional business. So the co-op struggled at the beginning, and I think eventually it settled out. They had a manager, Timna Tamanaha, who was excellent, and they grew equity through her management. She did a very good job. Not to say that there weren't times of strife during her tenure. There was, and she got through it, and the co-op got through it. Unfortunately, she passed away about 2 years ago. And one of the people that had worked for her, Denise Kawano, is now manager. She went through a trial period and has done an excellent job. The equity for the co-op has grown, not so much in building structure, but just in terms of they take on projects to be able to store either more containers or more product over time, because the chain of supply is getting more complicated these days for a number of reasons, and they're trying to adjust to that by having the ability to store more product. she's doing an excellent job also. And their fiscal year revenues have grown tremendously, as has their cash on hand. So they have for a number of years been able to return patronage back to its members. It definitely helps. I think the original premise was to do that, and they've done a good job in that respect. Because I think most years we have supplied that back to its members. Again, it's based on patronage. So currently, the part of the revenue that is generated is actually from non-members. So, like any co-op, you know, we have to figure out how to adjust to the type of clientele that wants to come to the business. Are they farmers, or are they just gardeners, or are they, you know, are they a potential member? So overall, the co-op has been very successful throughout time. And I think, Teresa, you could probably speak to this more than I could, but I think they're pretty highly rated in terms of co-ops in the country. They've done a good job in managing their expenses. They are an agricultural co-op for profit, so they do have a margin involved in what they sell, which allows them to gain a little bit of equity over time. So as treasurer, you know, and this is kind of funny, I have an ag degree in economics, and I've read and studied P&Ls and financial sheets a lot, but when you come down to it, the participation of the board members is crucial to be able to make that co-op function in a smooth way. I've also been involved in Molokai Livestock Co-op, which is just next door. It actually, Hikiola subdivided the property to allow Molokai Livestock to function. And if I could, I would like to speak to that one a little bit. That they started with a dream, or with the need from Molokai ranchers needing a place to go for their animals, because small communities really benefit if there are livestock producers on island to have a slaughterhouse and processing facility. So 25 years ago, you know, there were a dedicated group of members called the Molokai Grazers that, when the Molokai Ranch closed its slaughterhouse down, they decided that they needed to do that. So they spent 15 years trying to acquire funding to build a facility. They eventually got it from a number of partners. And I think the facility was completed in 2006 and was started up. Unfortunately, they suffered through what many co-ops suffered through in terms of hiring general managers that had a good sense of what it was. So they survived about a year and a half, and then unfortunately had to close because the business plan was not meeting the needs of that particular business, which is different than what Hikiola has been. Hikiola's business model has always been able to survive through the changes. The business aspect of most of these co-ops that I'm involved in, and there's one more I'm currently involved in, which is Hawaii Island Meat Co-op on Big Island over on the Kona side. They suffer through some of the same conditions that other co-ops suffer through in terms of getting off the ground and having a sufficient business model that allows them to function as a business for its members. I think that's one of the crucial aspects of what a co-op is. It comes from the word cooperative. So it's people getting together who want to cooperate. And for me, this is essential, because I think in any co-op that I've ever been involved in, there's always a little bit of contention. And there's always people who believe they have a better idea. Now, that may or may not be true at the end of the day, but the co-op has to be designed in order to be able to withstand those pressures. And I think this is key for me in thinking through how Hikiola functions as a co-op. It has a very strong set of bylaws and a very strong set of policies that help you determine if the board is functioning as it should as a board. I really like this idea of the NRECA that the utility co-op does in terms of director accreditation, because when you become a director, it's almost like you should submit a resume, because if you have experience in that particular business, then you have something to add. And if you don't, then that's okay. But if your agenda is to change the function of the co-op, I think that's when the co-ops I've been involved in begin to struggle with how they can function to serve its membership, because ultimately serving the membership is what you want to do. That's the purpose of forming the co-ops I've been involved in, is to serve its members. And so how you communicate with its members, how you get feedback from the members, how you adjust business practices to take care of those members' needs is crucial, because again, without the members, you really have no function as a co-op. So that's been true for Hikiola, as it is true for MLC, as it is true for HIMC. They're all in different positions at this point in time. But I have to say, again, Hikiola has had an outstanding record in terms of building equity over time, partly due to the stellar managers that they have had. So let's see, how it works at Hikiola is that Denise works very hard at organizing orders for its members and then shipping in container loads to Molokai. So obviously because Molokai is a little bit drier and definitely devastated by the deer, livestock producers struggle to be able to create enough feed for their animals unless they deer fence and irrigate for the most part. Last year was horrible for Molokai due to the drought and the deer pressure. So they ship in bulk. They try and store enough product based on forecasts. So she's very good at forecasting the needs of its membership to be able to have the products that they need. And it has changed. Deer fencing is now a bigger element for them, as is irrigation products. So when you look at the P&Ls, the amount of revenue generated by all the different segments has changed over time, just based on the environmental conditions, based on the number of farmers on Molokai, based on the bigger players that are on Molokai, like for instance, Bayer now, which used to be Monsanto. They have contributed a lot to the co-ops functioning, a little bit less now, but they're still support the co-op as much as they can. So once they get the products, then they break the containers apart and put the product on the floor, and then consumers come in and get what they need to get. So it's functioned pretty well in terms of pricing. They tend to have lower pricing. They definitely have lower pricing for you if you have to ship in yourself from anywhere. So you do save quite a bit on shipping costs by being able to participate there.
Hey, Jack.
Yeah.
You're kind of running on, so we got 10 minutes left, and we want to get to questions and answers.
No, I'm good. So if that's
totally,
fine, I'm good, because I forgot.
No, you brought up some great stuff.
Okay.
About
I'm
the
good.
importance of governance and the importance of having good policies. You brought a really lot of good stuff. So if anybody has questions, can you write it in the chat for one? One question that came up that I don't know if I'm the right person to answer it or not, or if somebody else wants to take it. but it's about the idea of co-ops being nonprofits. Are co-ops nonprofits? Because we talked about profits, nonprofits. So it's a really good question. So I think I'll take it. But because basically, like I said before, you really want to work at cost, but you need to be profitable because you have to reach that at least cost. And you would really like to maybe make a little bit more so that you could start to put that money in a slush fund account that in case, because business, like several people said, it goes up and down, right? So if you can, when you do make profits, you can stuff some away as like a savings account, that's a good thing. But the idea that co-ops are, they're not charitable organizations like a nonprofit. It is not that kind of a nonprofit. What it means is that the co-op itself is not meant to make a profit. It's meant to break even. But like Clifford said, even in the store, you have to make a profit because you have to pay all your bills and pay everyone. So you want to make a profit, but then if you do make a profit, then that money is either redistributed in the co-op or it's sent back to the members, like they said, based on use. So the co-op itself stays at this place where it didn't make a profit. So does that help? What's this? Oh yeah, tax professionals. Yeah, this is one reason why it is. It's like having real good tax help, professionals, lawyers, people who actually know co-ops, because people can give advice about co-ops, but unless they know what they're talking about, it's probably not going to be good advice. So so this is one of the things that we're going to do. We have three more webinars, and one of them we're going to bring an accountant and a lawyer in to really talk about mostly financing, fundraising in a co-op. Because even though co-ops have a securities exemption, you can't just go out and raise money any old way that you want to, because you will be breaking securities laws. So you still have to follow the securities laws. It just means you don't have to register as a securities person. So there are laws you need to follow. And so we're trying to get professional people in to teach all of us to improve our understanding. So
I would just add to Kay's question that depending on what stage you're at with your co-op and how complex your co-op is, you don't necessarily have to find like the best co-op expert out there. You just want to make sure that you're working with people who understand that the co-op is a unique model and either have some experience with it or can do the research to figure out how to properly, file taxes, do legal stuff. And, Kohala Center has a lot of those basic resources at hand. I think that it becomes more imperative to really find a co-op expert when you get further on and you have more complex needs, such as, you want to do a large capital raise, for example, or you have a lot of profit that needs to get redistributed properly back to the members. That's when it becomes more important to find a true co-op expert. You can get pretty far, just working with a good accountant and a good lawyer. Wes, you have a question about whether in producer co-ops or potentially supply co-ops, I guess, the co-op does most of the record keeping or the farmer. Just speaking for HUC does really comprehensive record keeping and generates reports for the growers. We give them kind of like a receipt with how much they deliver and all the details about specs, so they don't have to do that side. Some of them do anyway, though, and kind of like bring us their papers and make sure that it's reconciled, but the majority rely on our record keeping. Jack, how did it work at Molokai Livestock Co-op? Did the co-op also do the record keeping part, or did the growers?
We did some, so we did yearly totals for each member, and then we, when they brought in animals, they got an invoice back that stated the weights and the class and the price. So we kept that pretty tight for them. Yeah, we did a little bit of record keeping for the members.
Oops. So do we have any other questions? So if we don't have any other questions, do we have any other questions? DCCA really doesn't know anything about co-ops. That's funny. It's true. I mean, they know a little bit. They know what their statutes say. I think we have like 4 minutes left. 3 minutes. Donna?
Tamara's asking about the tax benefits of co-ops.
Oh, what are the tax benefits? Well, that has to do with the way the money is distributed. So with a co-op, if you don't make profits, then you're not going to have tax as a co-op to pay. And so with the co-op, you pay taxes on one level. So if the co-op retains the money, it pays taxes on the business level. If it distributes the money back to the members, then it's they pay taxes on their income tax. So that's kind of the benefits of co-ops, is that you have a choice. Like if you distribute it back, it gets paid at the tax of the individual rate. If you retain it, there's a couple of different ways to retain it, but if you retain it, then it does have to be taxed on a corporate level, I believe. So that's kind of how co-ops work.
She's asking if co-ops are taxed at a lower business rate if you go back into the business.
I don't think so. Are they?
Co-ops are taxed at the corporate interest rate. And then if the members get the patronage, then the members are taxed at their respective income tax bracket rate.
Yes.
But I think, you know, the real I don't think tax benefits are comparable to a nonprofit, because a nonprofit is tax exempt, right? So co-ops are not tax exempt. The difference is that in a nonprofit, you don't actually have owners. You could be a membership-based nonprofit, but nobody owns the nonprofit. In a co-op, you actually do have owners, and the owners are the users. So it's a user benefiting, user-controlled, user-directed organization. And if it does have profits, then those get redistributed back to the members. So the members actually have an opportunity to make money through the operations of the co-ops, on top of, you know, whatever they're getting directly for, like, per pound of fruit, for example. So it's a totally different model. The only thing they have in common is that they don't exist to generate a profit for outside shareholders. In a co-op, it's all for the benefit of the member owners, the users, the community, ultimately.
Yep.
Teresa, do you want to just give an overview of the next ones coming up?
Do you want to do it?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So we've got 3 more. They're on the 3rd Thursday of the month, same time as this one. The next one, we have Travis from Organic Valley. It's gonna we're gonna focus on membership, because members are our foundation. So it's gonna be really all about what they do, and I think learning lessons from them. The one after that is gonna focus on, you could probably talk more about this one, Donna, but it's about data management system that's been sort of developed that the Ulu Co-op has now kind of taken on. It was a system that got kind of tweaked. Is that right, Donna? And so you guys are going to talk about that, right?
Yeah, we're going to highlight Sam Aruk's software, Natural Resources Data Solution, which he developed primarily for conservation projects and more recently applied to agriculture. We were his first co-op application, so it's a totally customizable software that's both a database and an analytic tool in one. So we'll just share how we're using it, and I think it might be relevant for other co-ops, as well as other types of businesses, potentially food hubs around the state would be interested in using it.
Thanks, Donna. And so the last one's May 19th, and it's going to be on financials and fundraising. So we have Dave Swanson, an attorney, and Josh. He is from Moss Adams. He's really good CPA accountants, and both these guys really specialize in co-ops. And so they're going to really talk about how co-ops raise money, because it's a little different than the way other people do it. And so they're going to give us a really good some really good lessons, I think, during that webinar. So if you're a co-op, I would really send your whole boards. Try, go back and talk to people, try and get people to come to that one, especially if they're co-ops, members of co-ops. As we get ready to close, I want to make sure that I really thank Donna Spiro and the Ulu Co-op, because really even though I kind of led this thing off, really it's like, it's really kind of been driven by the Ulu Co-op and partnering with me to do this. Me and Donna started talking last year about how the co-ops, we really need to kind of come together and start having a stronger understanding of what co-ops are, a stronger like network of co-ops. And we just want co-ops to work, because we both really believe that, because Hawaii is a very small system, and to be able to build the food system and care for each other, right? To have electricity costs that aren't ridiculous, to care for the needs that we have. So anyway, thank you everyone for coming. I think we're running over. What was that? Whispering Winds.
Thank you all so much for coming. Hope to see you next month. And if you have any further questions, feel free to email Teresa. We'll also be sharing the recording from this webinar on our website, and we'll send the link to you via email.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Mahalo.